was the editor of the Little River News in Ashdown, Arkansas, sent out his associate editor with a camera. She was the first one there, about 5 hours after the farmer had found them. And she said that the outside of the embryo sac, the cow, the soil, everything was dry. But what really got her was that she reached down to touch this embryo sac, and she was taking pictures, and inside this sac she could see no fluid of any kind. What evaporated the embryo fluid also where this calf was found? Those are the kinds of questions that have puzzled a lot of people. Now it's 25 years, we're talking a quarter of a century. This phenomenon is worldwide. It's been going on for decades. There's no one who has ever been arrested.
Cattle mutilations and unexplained cattle surgery continue to this day, unabated, around the world. Next up, UFOs and the Las Vegas connection. Meet George Knapp of KLAS-TV, Las Vegas. For 2 years, from 1989 through 1990, George produced several award-winning reports and full-length specials about the UFO phenomenon and those who get caught up in it. Initially optimistic that his programs would lend credibility to the topic of UFOs, his programs were seen by millions here in America and overseas. His programs, UFOs The Best Evidence, Parts 1 and 2, became a hot property on the illegal video cassette market, with more people having seen the illegally copied tapes than originally saw the programs as broadcast. After dealing with the subject of UFOs and high-visibility proponents of the Flying Saucer Society, his initial optimism has turned into pessimism after having his fill of lunatic fringe ufologists.
We've all seen so many people in this field where they want to convince you you've got to believe. I'm more of the opinion you put out the information and let people make up their minds. I wrote to President Carter to ask him a couple of questions, and that's a whole other line. I never got through to him either. I wrote to virtually every NASA astronaut who has ever been associated with this phenomenon and never got a single response from any of them. You'd figure you'd at least get a form letter back, and never got anything. I wrote, I'm very disappointed with the Freedom of Information Act, how effective that is, too, because I didn't get diddly out of that. Wrote to NASA knowing that they had a certain body of information. I asked for all of it. Well, here it is. Here's all of it. And 6 months later, somebody else asks for all of it, and they got a lot bigger pile of all of it than I got. So I think, there's very few checks and balances on that. They give you what they want in that system. I asked for my own FBI file. I know that there is one there. I've covered the president on a number of occasions. I know there have been some background checks. I know I've been mentioned to the FBI in the course of investigating various stories here in Las Vegas in association with organized crime. They have no file on me. That was their response.
Oh, yes, they do.
Well, they do now. Some of the information is very disturbing. It changes the way you view things. It changes the way you look at everything once it hits you what really is going on. And I think the government could be right in a sense that if the story came out in its entirety, if the president went on television and said, they're here, we can't do anything about it, that it would shake our foundations. It would shake our belief in religion and shake our belief in government. Maybe people would stop paying their taxes because it would change the way we view everything. It's changed my life. I mean, I'm not seeing God or anything, but it's changed the way I view things.
Most controversial in Knapp's UFO report was the story of this young scientist, Robert Lazar. Lazar claims that out in the Las Vegas desert, he worked on operational flying saucers at an area called Site 4. He says it's our country's #1 top secret.
I had a casual meeting with Dr. Edward Teller while working at Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico. He referred me, after several years, to a job out in the New Mexico desert, a place known as S4 near Area 51. Where many top-secret government projects had their home base, essentially. Edward Teller is the director of the program, and I think someone approved by Ed Teller, someone suggested by him, I think that carries enough weight in itself I had a fascination with small jet engines. I had built and installed a jet engine in a little Honda Civic, a small car. It made the front page in the local Los Alamos paper, The Monitor. Coincidentally, and in fact on the back of that front page, Ed Teller was giving a lecture on SDI, and I believe that was June 1982 at Los Alamos. As I was walking up to the lecture hall, I wanted to hear what Ed Teller had to say. As I was walking up to the lecture hall, I got there relatively early, thinking there would be a fairly large turnout, and as it turned out, there wasn't. I got there about an hour and a half early, and Ed Teller is sitting outside, and he had just bought a paper out of the paper machine, and he was reading the front page, and I thought, well, what an opportunity to introduce myself. I can say, well, I'm the guy you're reading about, I always wanted to meet you, so on and so forth, just to get into some small talk. We talked for a little bit. He seemed interested in some things I had to say, and really just wanted to hear his viewpoints on certain things. And we had a cup of coffee together and a donut down at the cafeteria. That was the extent of our meeting. After that, I heard his lecture, and later, after I had moved to Las Vegas, when I decided to get back into the scientific field and sent out resumes to many other laboratories around the country, also any government research organizations, I did shoot a resume to Ed Teller, too. He called right after receiving it and said, I had directed your resume to someone in Nevada. It's a highly classified project, and they'll be requesting an interview. Within 20 minutes, the phone rang. That was the request for the interview. So obviously, Ed Teller gave it more than a nudge. It was more like a directive that this person will be interviewed for this particular job, and that's the bottom line. So yeah, he did get me into the program. In early 1989, I was already in the program and working at a slow pace, because at the same time I had to go through an extensive security investigation that was like no other I had been through before. I had Q clearance from Los Alamos, and this was something far above it, which I was told was 38 levels above Q clearance. It required an executive order to be signed at that time. At that time, that executive order was signed by Ronald Reagan. The program, I was only in the program for a short time, however. I think that lasted all the way till April 1989, when we finally parted ways, and there's a whole story behind that. Initially, during the interviews, it was never specifically stated, hey Bob, we're going to be working on flying saucers or alien craft recovered from crashes or recovered from wherever. The job title was a senior staff physicist. I was to be working on advanced propulsion techniques. Certainly when I made a few trips out there, began reading briefings, things dealing with the origin of the craft, the race or the type of aliens that piloted the craft, specifics on what these looked like, what their physical structure was from autopsy reports, things of this sort. Seeing the hardware, I realized that this is not a research effort, that this is back engineering, and that we have the device, the craft itself, and we are working backwards to find out how it works. They have the finished product and really want to find out the manufacturing technique, the basic physics in it, and it became very obvious what we're working on. But it was strange that even up till the very end, really no words were said about what was going on. The time I saw the craft, large disc, flying saucer, typical flying saucer, even that I basically put out of my mind, thinking, well, this obviously is a creation of the government, some sort of advanced type of flying vehicle, maybe an advanced fighter of the future, and this explains all those crazy flying saucer stories. People just seeing tests of this craft. The real striking part was when I saw the interior of the craft and noticing that the seats and everything were extremely small, obviously made for a small creature or children. Obviously they wouldn't let children in there, but that was before I got heavy into it to see that we were talking about strange languages and things and technology that doesn't even exist, and so on and so forth. The information concerning the craft itself, just the hardware, is very compartmentalized. There's a group that deals with specifics on the navigational equipment, the specifics on the metallurgy of the craft, and the specifics on the propulsion and power system of the craft, which is what what my group worked on. That in itself created a focal point for our research and looking into what we were dealing with. So I, in a short amount of time, because that was all we had to look at, really gained quite a bit of information on how things operated. Of course, verifying the employment there is somewhat difficult. Los Alamos denies I've ever worked there, as does Kirkmeyer, even the subcontractor for Los Alamos, which is interesting. We went back and were able to dig up an inter-lab directory phone book with my name in it. Certainly I got some of my colleagues from Los Alamos to verify that I worked there, but for the most part, Los Alamos has kept everything pretty quiet and even denies that I ever lived in the town, though I'm known by many people in the town and many of the people I worked with, supervisors, so on and so forth.
When Lazar went to trial on unrelated charges in 1990, even the judge agreed that Lazar seemed to be a man without a country.
We do have a W-2 form of record that shows that he worked for the United States Department of Naval Intelligence. And I also note that he is in fact listed in the Los Alamos National Laboratory telephone directory. It's obvious that it's very difficult to get information on Mr. Lazar from government sources, enormously difficult.
A lot more than just UFO sightings have been reported out here in the Nevada desert. Independent investigator and reporter Tony Pelham has spent countless evenings outside the Nevada test site, where he's run across mutilated cows, strange lights in the sky, and unfriendly security guards without ID.
The desert up there is full of troops in camouflage uniforms. They carry M16s, and they have no identification. They're not Air Force, they're not Army. They don't have any markings at all. And I came real close to being taken to jail a couple of times. So I found that real strange. I heard all types of theories about who they were. But they would challenge me, and then I would challenge them. When they would approach me, they would say, "What are you doing here?" I would say, "What are you doing here? You're on BLM land. You're roaming around outside the secure area." My opinion is that the government is hiding something that's a lot more secure than anything similar to the stealth or the U-2 or that type of thing. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there's an underground alien base up there. I don't know if they are UFOs or aliens. I just know that they have got security up there that's far beyond what you see around any military type installation. And I don't understand why the uniformed security guards with M16s don't have markings. And when I ask them, "Are you with the Air Force? Are you with the Army?" they don't answer any questions. They just direct you to leave the area. The troopers have held me and had the Lincoln County Sheriff's Department come out on 3 different occasions, and each time they filled papers out on me and instructed me not to go near that area. And on the last occasion,
on what pretense?
That I have no business near a secret facility. And I explained to them, I'm not even within a mile. I'm on BLM land. So several months ago, about 6 months ago, I went up and I just went near the Medlin Ranch, and I spotted one of the blazers, but I went nowhere near the fences. I've never crossed the line. I've only gone near it sometimes. On my way back to Alamo, the sheriff's department met me, pulled me over, filled out another set of papers in a very formal manner, said, "Mr. Pelham, this is the last time you're being told. The next time," he said, "and I'm telling you from the higher-ups, if you come back up and go up this road near this facility again, you are going to jail, period." On one particular occasion, I had some bizarre experiences of lights seeming to be at a great distance and then just in a matter of seconds being right at me. But I have never gone on camera or ever come back to George Knapp or anybody and claimed to have seen a UFO. I don't know what I saw that night. Shortly after that, as I started back, a blazer came in front of me up from a side road, and the camouflage uniform troopers stepped out with their M16s, and they asked me what was I doing coming from a secure military installation. And I said, "I'm not coming from this." I said, "I'm sitting out here in the desert." And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm watching the strange lights." And he said, "Strange lights? What lights? We didn't see any lights." I went north of Las Vegas, just above Alamo, in the area known as Area 51, north of there, and I crisscrossed a lot of ranches, all through Lincoln County and up in Whitebine County, and I found a number of dead cattle